Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into my college football week 4 recap. I'm going to be recapping some of the bigger games, then we'll take a look at the FPI and how that's updated with all of the analytics. But obviously last night, the biggest game, kind of a letdown there for the first half. I mean, it was like 3-0 at half or whatever. Ohio State ends up winning late at Notre Dame. Absolutely demoralizing loss for Notre Dame for a number of reasons. I would say the biggest one, just the idea Notre Dame still cannot get over the hump against an ultra elite college football team. Ohio State, one of the top 2 or 3 most talented teams right now. And I'm just going to start by saying with Ohio State, there are a lot of issues. The Ohio State offensive line, I think, right now, still very bad, very underwhelming. They gave McCord very little time there towards the end. They got very lucky that Notre Dame rushed 3 on that 3rd and 19. Also, Ryan Day, a few really bad play calls. I mean, listen, they end up winning, but the Jets sweep on 4th and, 1 or whatever. They had another 4th and goal at the 1. Very hard for them to gain yards on 3rd and short and 4th and short. And by the way, the one touchdown at the way end of the game with Chip Trayanum, they scored mainly because Notre Dame had only 10 men on the field. They had no down linemen where Trayanum ran on that 3rd and goal with 3 seconds left. That's really the only way Ohio State was able to score. I mean, if you're the Buckeyes, certainly you'll take this. It's really just to survive and advance, and it's very clear that Kyle McCord and this Ohio State team, very different from years prior to where it seems like McCord, he's a gamer. He did make some big-time throws, but he's really not going to wow you in terms of stats like Justin Fields did, like Dwayne Haskins did, like C.J. Stroud did. He's more of just like a gamer. He'll make a big throw here and there. So it's kind of a different version of Ohio State. And then Ohio State's defense, it was good in the first half. The problem is just allowing elongated drives. Notre Dame had a 94-yard drive like early in the 4th quarter. They had another 75-yard touchdown drive. And the thing is, Notre Dame did a really good job at chewing the clock, especially in the second half of this game, and really controlling the line of scrimmage. That was the main issue with Ohio State's defense. I think if you're Notre Dame, to me, it's an issue with the skill position players. They have very little skill position players on the outside, and now Notre Dame is looking at a brutal schedule. You've got Duke on the road next week. That's going to be a 7:30 ABC game. Game day's going to be there. You're at a Louisville team. Louisville's looking really good. They might be ranked. You still have Clemson, I believe. You still have USC on that schedule. This is a behemoth of a schedule. You really needed this win. You were at home. You were up 14-10. You had multiple 3rd downs, 4th downs at the end of the game. Ohio State with 0 timeouts. Also, you could say Notre Dame really shot themselves in the foot by trying to throw that screen pass when there was about 4 minutes left. It was like 2 minutes left. Ohio State would have used a timeout. They end up saving that timeout. And then I thought, Ryan Day, what was he doing not calling a timeout? He wanted to save it. It just doesn't make sense. You're letting them run a free 40 seconds off the clock. You need to call the timeout so you have 2 minutes, 5 seconds left rather than starting your last drive with 1 minute, 30 seconds left. I did not understand that at all, but it ends up working out for Ohio State. So, again, if you're Ohio State, you still have major questions about this team. It was a win for sure, but it's a win that is very hard to replicate based on the 3rd and 19 conversion. Some of the other stuff, the offense wasn't great. Marvin Harrison ends up getting injured. He comes back, thankfully. But overall, it's a survive and advance game for Ohio State. You're at Wisconsin. That's a very tough game. Look at Wisconsin, their performance against Purdue on Friday. You're at Michigan, obviously, at the end of the season. Going to be a very tough game. Penn State at home is going to be really tough. But Ohio State, certainly, I would say they move up probably 1, maybe 2 spots because of this. Right now, the other issue for Ohio State, though, Notre Dame is going to have these tough games. If Notre Dame starts losing, this win is going to lose luster. So if you're Ohio State, you have to start rooting for Notre Dame to win some of these big games starting next week at Duke. Because imagine if Duke beats Notre Dame, maybe by 7 or 14. That win by Ohio State against Notre Dame on the road, it's immediately going to lose a lot of sting because Notre Dame will have 2 losses. So that's another thing to look at. And then you did have, this was another big game, the noon game. Florida State going into Clemson, winning. I'll be honest, Florida State is a very streaky team. I'm not going to overreact and say, oh, they should fall down a ton, but this is 2 straight weeks now, and you look at Boston College and their performance this past week, just getting throttled. Florida State barely beats them on the road, and then Florida State, to me, gets completely outplayed by Clemson. They were outgained by about 150 yards. It was actually a lot worse. Earlier in the game, they were getting outgained like 250 yards. I think they were just better than Florida State. Now, Florida State won because it's one game and weird things can happen in one game, but people don't understand. Jordan Travis is really not that mobile of a quarterback. I thought he was a lot more mobile than he actually is. And Clemson, to me, is a top 15, top 20 team in college football. People will say, oh, they're 2-2. Yeah, they're a good football team, man. They're very talented. They recruit extremely well. They've got studs on defense. They have a 5-star quarterback, 5-star running back, good receivers, and they're good. And it's funny because Clemson came into this game unranked against the number 4 team in the country, and they were 1-point underdogs. The game opened as a pick'em. They were unranked against the number 4 team. Game opens as a pick'em. Clemson, even though they are 2-2, they would be a top 15 team for me right now, at least top 20. But let's just get to the FPI, and then I'll kind of react to the games as we go. So Ohio State, obviously, they're going to, stay number 1. They really didn't move up or down in terms of FPI. They beat Notre Dame on the road. It's a big win. The yardage was very similar. They had 366 total yards. Notre Dame had like 350. So there's really not a discrepancy there. Oklahoma's at number 2. I thought Oklahoma, their defense looks really good. I'm really liking what I'm seeing. The only issue I have with Oklahoma, they can't run the ball. That's going to be a problem. They don't have a running back, but their defense, it's very talented. Because I remember a lot of those recruits, I was watching them, I was like, these are solid 4-star players. They've got talent on that defense. And they go into Cincinnati. It's a noon start time, and they really silence them. I know Cincinnati lost to Miami of Ohio, but still, they're not a terrible team. Alabama sitting at number 3. It's a nice bounce-back game for Bama. It's a get-right game against Ole Miss. I said they would cover the 7-point spread, and they do easily. And Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell, unbelievable pass rushing duo. Jalen Milroe, can he grow? Can he develop enough? I think it's going to be very tough right now because Bama does not have a legitimate number 1 receiver. Milroe's really going to have to start using his legs more, but Bama does get the win. It's kind of a nice, solid, stabilized win for Bama against a decent Ole Miss team. Penn State destroys Iowa. Guys, I've never seen a game like this. Go look at the box score of this game. Iowa had like 76 total yards of offense. Penn State time of possession was 45 minutes. And Penn State right now, they're trending up. The whiteout, they win this. By the way, Drew Aller, very strange game. He had like 37 pass attempts for 166 yards, which obviously is not good, but he didn't turn the ball over. It was raining. Iowa does a good job on defense. It was just kind of weird. You've got Georgia, once again, not covering the spread. I believe now they're 0-4 against the spread, or maybe they're 0-3-1. Maybe they had a push, but I mean, they beat UAB. It's impossible to really say about Georgia. You can see they're moving down the FPI, but they're all really close in terms of the numbers. It doesn't really surprise me that they're moving down. They just haven't been that good this year. But I know people will say, well, they're not tested yet. They're not motivated. They're just beating bad teams. Yeah, well, if you're not that dominant, you're going to move down, at least in terms of analytics. You've got Texas. They crushed Baylor. A lot of people really high on Texas right now for sure. To me, Texas reminds me of what FSU was 2 weeks ago. I'm not saying they're going to, have close games or lose, but it feels the same vibe. You've got Oregon at number 7, so obviously Oregon beating Colorado, Deion Sanders, all the hype, Dan Lanning being the enemy in this game, trying to run up the score, whatever. The discourse with Deion Sanders is really tiring at this point. I mean, listen, Colorado, they were 1-11 last year. They got a bunch of transfer guys. They've got a bunch more talent infused to their team, but they're not going to turn 1-11 into 11-1. They were 21-point underdogs in this game. What did people really expect? And I do think it's a situation where there's been an influx of casual fans into college football, and they just don't understand. They think Deion Sanders is gonna win every game. They were saying, how is Deion Sanders 21-point underdogs in this game? It doesn't make any sense. Of course it makes sense. Yes, they added talent, but you're not going to add that much talent to really turn your team around and become a national title contender. It's just not going to happen. So Oregon crushes Colorado. Ho-hum. Did I expect them to lose that bad? I mean, probably not, but it is what it is. It's a good win for Oregon, but I kind of expected Oregon to win big. I mean, honestly, I did expect them to win big. I had them winning by like 23. USC moves down 3 spots, so a lot of people don't know about USC. They had a late night game against Arizona State. Really underwhelmed against a bad Arizona State team. They ended up winning 42-28, I want to say. So yeah, USC, they might be moving down in terms of the AP poll. Washington is just destroying everyone right now. Washington, I want to say, had 45 points in the first half. It's just ridiculous. And then there is FSU at number 10. So FSU stays put after their win at Clemson. Notre Dame actually moves up 1 spot for the tough loss to Ohio State. That really doesn't surprise me too much. I don't think Notre Dame's really going to be penalized for, losing to a top 5. I mean, according to FPI, they're number 1 team by 3 points in a game that was virtually even throughout. You've got Michigan moving up 2 spots. They're up to number 12. They beat Rutgers. I will say Michigan really, they should not have covered that game. That was a pick 6 that Michigan got when Rutgers was going into score. Everyone had Rutgers plus the 24. It was a 14-point swing because Rutgers was on a scoring drive, and Michigan ends up pushing. They end up winning 31-7, so it ends up being a 24-point margin. Ole Miss stays at number 13. I think Ole Miss is worse than that. So the analytics, they're a little bit off on Ole Miss because Ole Miss faced Tulane without Michael Pratt. You can see LSU down 5 spots. LSU, they were way overrated, being 17.5-point favorites over Arkansas, but they get the win, and that's really all that matters. Miami stays at number 15, excuse me. They destroy Temple. I mean, that's a solid win for Miami, I'm not going to lie. A&M moves up 2 spots. I mean, I guess they beat Auburn. I don't think it's that impressive. Clemson still at number 17. Doesn't surprise me at all. You got Tennessee at number 8. Wow, Tennessee up 6 spots. I mean, they did crush UTSA, but I'm not that huge on Tennessee. I guess we'll see what happens with them. North Carolina sitting at 19. Yeah, I mean, North Carolina's been winning. They got a big win against Pitt for sure. Syracuse down to 20. They're overwriting Syracuse still. I mean, they beat Army. I get it. Kansas State at 21. I would have Kansas State lower. Oregon State down 2 spots after the loss. Oregon State's defense just got destroyed in this game. And that really goes down to, Oregon State's just hasn't recruited well, and it shows on the defensive side of the ball, especially the secondary. You saw Washington State and Cam Ward, the dude was 19 of 20 in the first half. That just can't happen. I mean, that's horrible. Louisville sitting at 23. Louisville really trending up right now. I have a feeling they're probably going to be ranked. You've got Utah down to number 24. And I completely agree with this. I know everyone's going to say, oh, Utah beat UCLA. That's a solid win at home without Cam Rising. Guys, Utah had about 200 yards of total offense. They're not good on offense. They're going to go on a losing streak. I'm telling people, and this is not because I dislike Utah. It's just the reality of it. And people are going to move Utah up, probably inside their top 10. I agree with the analytics. I would have them in the low 20s, like 23rd or 24th at this point, even though they are 4-0. You can say, oh, UCLA's solid. I mean, UCLA's right now, they're an unfinished product because they're starting a true freshman. And also their offensive line is just horrible. Dante Moore really couldn't do anything there at the end of the game. UCF sitting at 25. I mean, they lost to Kansas State. That's kind of a brutal loss, honestly, for them, especially a situation where they were only 3-point underdogs. They kind of needed that game. But either way, guys, that's just kind of my recap for this week. The biggest takeaway, I guess, Ohio State defeating Notre Dame in what turned out to be a very weird game. The Buckeyes end up coming back, winning it late on that big 3rd down conversion, and then winning it basically right at the buzzer, 17-14, and actually pushing on the spread. They were -3 in this game, although some people got it at 3.5, so some people didn't get the cover. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on X. Link to that's always in the description.